Breast is best. That is a saying that you will never hear more in your life than when you have a newborn. And absolutely, breastfeeding is amazing and wonderful for your baby, and it can be extremely enjoyable for the mum. But there are times and there are people that breastfeeding is not best for. Now, I don't want anyone writing in telling me that I shouldn't be saying this because I feel very passionate about this. There are 110% families that breastfeeding is just not right for. And for those families, I just want to tell you, it's okay. Your ability to breastfeed or your desire to breastfeed is not an equivalent to the sort of mother or parent you are, despite how you might be feeling at this present moment, particularly if you have a newborn, because the pressure to breastfeed is enormous. And I want to just share with you a little bit about our story and our breastfeeding journey, because I honestly believe it's going to help a lot of mums out there. So obviously we have twins, and before the boys had arrived, I decided I was definitely going to breastfeed because tandem feeding would be so much easier than having to feed one after the other. I would feed both at once. That's going to make life easier. It'll be more affordable. It'll be easier to get out and about. Don't know where my rationalizing was for that one, but that's just what I thought. I knew that some people experienced difficulties breastfeeding, but I didn't give it much thought, to be honest, because I was focused on thinking about other things like the delivery or the nursery or names, because I think truthfully that's what so many of us do focus on when we're pregnant. So I decided that I was going to breastfeed, and we had an amazing obstetrician and an amazing antenatal nurse, and she had advised me that I could actually hand express colostrum before the boys arrived and store it. And now that was weird for me, but also really exciting because I didn't want them to have formula because breast was best. And I thought that's an awesome way to ensure that when they go, we knew they would have to go to special care. A lot of twins have to. When they go to special care, at least they'll have all of this colostrum there that they can have until I've recovered from my cesarean and I can breastfeed them. So I started hand expressing colostrum, and it was a weird thing to do for me, obviously, because I'd never done it before, but I'd stored it in little syringes in the freezer. So I had all of these snappy bags of colostrum ready to go when the boys arrived. And I honestly thought there was so much there. And I remember after our C-section, maybe 2.5, 3 hours after, a nurse from special care came in and said, "We're going to give the boys formula because we're out of colostrum." And I was shocked. I was like, "No, what do you mean? We had heaps of snappy bags. There's a lot. Are you sure?" And at that point in time, I was also recovering, and I was just like, "Yep, you've got to do what you've got to do. What other option is there?" So the boys were fed formula in special care, and I was like, "That's okay. That's all right. They need those calories now, but as soon as I can breastfeed, as soon as my milk comes in, that'll be it. No more formula." And that belief was really, really cemented by the hospital staff. Everyone was all about the breastfeeding, which is great, and I'm not taking away from that, but I do feel like the pressure to breastfeed is so huge, it can feel crippling to a mum that doesn't have her milk supply in, or that maybe doesn't want to breastfeed for an unknown reason, or can't breastfeed. So, where was I? So the boys were having formula, and throughout our stay in hospital, I was attempting to breastfeed. I was there for every feed. I was latching them, trying to learn how to feed. Occasionally, they'd get a couple of good sucks. I really, really struggled because it took a long time for my milk to come in. I was pumping all of the time trying to get it to come in. I was taking everything I could take naturally to try and get my milk to come, but it just wasn't coming. And then when it did come, holy hell, it was so hard to feed them because there was just so much milk. And I have quite big boobs naturally, and then when the milk came in, they were just the size of a small village, and trying to feed this teeny tiny baby whose head was this big with a boob that was this big was so challenging, and especially when I wanted to feed them two at once. And it was just such a stressful experience. And I wish that I had had I think with one baby, I feel like perhaps I would have had the option to go and lie down and spend, a week in bed with them, learning how to feed them, practicing, only focusing on that. but because there was two, I didn't have that option, because if I was focusing on one, the other one needed attention as well. And I had to pump, and they were having 3-hourly feeds. So the boys were having every 3 hours, they'd go on the breast, then they'd have an expressed breast top up from the milk I had pumped, and then they would have a formula top up because there wasn't enough milk. So that's a 3-course feed per baby every 3 hours, and that feed could take up to an hour, sometimes longer for each baby. So it was just this cycle of never sleeping, trying to get enough into them, 3 courses, trying to keep on top of the bottles, trying to pump, trying to learn to feed, and it was just so hard. So hard. Like, I've never experienced anything like it. I didn't enjoy breastfeeding, and I think, like, now, as I said, the boys are nearly 3 years on, I'm totally okay with saying that. Like, no, I didn't enjoy it. It was really, really hard. It was stressful. The babies didn't seem to enjoy it. It wasn't working well for us. But at that point in time, I was genuinely nearly crippled by the fear of stopping breastfeeding, because so many people, strangers, medical professionals, family, friends, everyone was so focused on breastfeeding that I felt like not only was I letting my babies down, I felt like I was letting society down, because I couldn't breastfeed well and because it was making me miserable. And I can remember very clearly, we had one home visit from a healthcare nurse, and she came in, and I had said to her, this was maybe 7 weeks in, I'd said to her, I think that I'm going to have to stop putting them on the breast. I think I'm just going to have to keep solely pumping, because it's just getting too much and they're not getting anything from the breast, and it's adding an hour to each feed, and it's time I don't have, and it's time that I should be sleeping or eating. And she said to me, oh, don't give up on breastfeeding. Really, you should be able to sit there and tandem feed both boys in under 5 minutes and drink a glass of water. And now I think about that, and it makes me laugh, because that's hilarious. She didn't have any kids. She certainly didn't have twins. I don't know where she was getting her data or statistics from that I should be able to drink a glass of water and feed both babies in under 5 minutes. But at that point in time, she felt like this professional, this governing body that was telling me what I should do, and I felt a responsibility to do it. And I was so let down by myself. I was so let down that I was going to give up breastfeeding, and I was crying. And I remember my mum and Matt saying to me, it's not that big a deal, Kylie. Like, so many people are formula fed. It's not a big deal. And I was just, I felt shit. I felt like I was failing. And another time, we went in to get the boys weighed, and at this time they were 100% express breastfed. And one of the healthcare nurses changed a nappy, and she said to me, I can tell these babies are breastfed. And then everyone started clapping. Oh, wow, like, that's amazing, you're breastfeeding twins. And there was so much adulation, and it felt great. But I remember thinking, this is part of the problem. Would you guys be clapping and cheering me on if I was formula feeding them? Because you should be, because formula feeding can be just as hard. And it was like this, I felt great because they were like praising me because it was hard, but I also felt a bit of like resentment, like every mum should get a praise for feeding their baby, whether it's breast or bottle. And it was just such a hard decision for me to move away from breastfeeding, and it took a lot of time. And I'm not doing this vlog to convince anyone to do it. I just want to share my experience and let you know that you will come through it, and you will get to a place where you look back and you realise that whilst it felt so hugely important in that moment, you haven't done anything wrong by your baby if you can't breastfeed them. Nothing. You're a great mum, especially if you choose to formula feed your baby, if that's what works for you. We were lucky enough to have an amazing healthcare nurse come out, and I remember we were all sitting around the table, and my mum was there and Matt was there, and the healthcare nurse said to me, Kylie, fed is best, and a happy mum is way better for a baby and for a household than your boys getting a couple of mils of breast milk from your boob. And that's just the truth of it. And she said to me, when you're out and about, do you ever look at an adult and think to yourself, I wonder if he was breast or formula fed? No, you don't. You don't. It doesn't cross your mind. And it's just that you're so concentrated on babies, and everything's amplified, and everywhere you go, everyone says to you, down at Woolworths, people would say to me, oh, are they breastfed? And you just feel like saying, it's none of your business. But as they get older, every month older, and especially once they're over 1, strangers stop asking that question. Randomly every now and then someone will ask me, but it's usually more from a place of interest. But when they're little, it's like everyone feels like they have a right to ask you. And if you already feel like you're failing at breastfeeding, it can feel really insulting when they ask that question. So for me, it was a huge relief when finally a healthcare nurse said to me, it's okay to stop breastfeeding, Kylie. You're not doing anything wrong to do that. And I hand on my heart, when we made that decision for me to reduce pumping, stop pumping, move away from the pump, and introduce more formula, our life got lots better. They didn't start sleeping more because of formula. That's a whole other vlog. That's a bit of a myth. But life got better in terms of I had more time to bond with them. I could play with them because I could put both of them down on the floor and give them equal attention rather than spending an hour stressing over feeding this one while the other one's crying and then swapping only to have to repeat the process again. Life got better. And for those of you with multiples, sometimes you do just have to choose the option that allows you to have the most time to bond and play with them rather than the best option. There's another little thing that I wanted to share. I know this video is going for a long time, but when we were making these programs, I initially wanted program 1 to include some specialists. So I wanted a midwife and I wanted a pediatrician, and I really wanted a pediatrician that would sit down with me and sit down on camera and help mums decide what formula is right for them. Now, I wasn't asking for a brand recommendation. I was just talking about deciphering all the terminology and the ingredients and how long you should try a formula and just lots of information on formula feeding for those mums that weren't breastfeeding. And I was so excited because one of the big pediatrician chains that I reached out to got back in touch with me, and one of their representatives organised to have a coffee with us. And I was so excited, and I said to Matt, this is awesome. They're going to come on, they might come on board and help families understand formula. And it just wasn't the case. We had coffee with this lady, and she said to me, oh, Kylie, I think it's a great idea, but I'm telling you now, there is not a pediatrician in Australia who will sit down on camera and talk about formula feeding. And I was like, I don't understand. And she said that the breastfeeding regulations are so huge that everything must be breast is best. And she said that in the privacy of a consultation, a pediatrician will have no hesitation in recommending formula, but they would not get on camera and give formula feeding recommendations. And I just felt like my head was going to explode. That's part of the problem. That pressure, part of the problem. It's amazing. And I left that meeting feeling so deflated. And I remember it took me a couple of days. I was really mulling over it. And then I said to Matt, you know what? Bugger. Probably wasn't the word I used. Those people that aren't willing to come on camera and say it's okay. I'm going to say it's okay. I'm going to tell any mum out there who needs to hear it, you're a great mum. It is okay if you choose to formula feed. Breastfeeding does not mean you're a better mother. I think that's really important. And maybe you need to watch that bit again if that applies to you right now. As I said, I don't want any breastfeeding mums writing in saying that this is me being, against breastfeeding, because that's not what it's about at all. I am just pro-feeding, and I wanted to share my experience because I know how it feels to be the mum that feels like they're failing because they can't do what everyone else seems to be able to do. So I really, really hope that touches someone out there. And if it does, if it's helpful to you, please come over and comment on Instagram, because it means a lot to me to know that there are mums out there who feel connected by sharing experiences. So I hope to chat to you over on Instagram. And yeah, thank you for listening.